Skypiea arc is one of the most divisive arcs in all of One Piece. I'd say it's about a 50-50 split with the audience from what I can tell, of people that love it and people that hate it. My opinion, I'm somewhere in between almost. I feel like it's underrated, but it's not the best arc, but I do enjoy it. And hopefully throughout this video, you can sort of see why I feel the way I feel about it. So I want to take you back through the Skypiea Saga, all the way from Jaya to the end of Skypiea, and then we'll talk about G8 at the end, even though it's filler, but it's great. But yeah, so without further ado, let's start with the Jaya arc. Again, the premise of this, I think, is great. It's essentially like a mystery straight from the get-go, and then a really exciting premise in the Sky Island and this sunken ship that we don't know where it came from. Like, One Piece has set up something very interesting here straight away in this new arc. This was one of the coolest and most terrifying reveals I think I've ever seen. We learn a little bit more about Whitebeard, and it makes sense as to why Ace respects him and looks up to him so much, because we know Ace is very strong. People are very scared of him, being the second in command to the Whitebeard pirates. But Buggy says himself that Whitebeard is the only person to ever compete neck and neck with Gold Roger, you know, the strongest Pokemon, the strongest pirate of all time. Bellamy himself is an interesting character to begin with, because he has a philosophy that I don't believe we've actually seen yet in the show, and that is that he wants pirates to stop believing in this fantasy of the One Piece and stop believing in their illusions and their dreams and their delusions, essentially. There was that pirate that Luffy had that weird competition with in the last episode, and he says that pirates should always follow their dreams, people should always follow their dreams, and that the Sky Islands do exist. He's sort of like a glimmer of hope that, you know, this isn't all fake. The Sky Islands aren't fake, and there are still good people, even in this mock town where it's full of like pirates and bad people, essentially. This episode tells the tragic story about a notorious liar called Noland Mont Blanc, and it tells us his life and death was completely misrepresented. At least that's the way it seems. I absolutely love the direction that this arc is going so far. I think the mystery surrounding the Sky Islands is really, really intriguing. I love the whole thing about Noland. Was he telling the truth? Was he lying? Was the fairy tale correct? Was he just blagging everything he was telling? Or was there truth in what he was saying? Was he exaggerating? There is some evidence to point towards the fact that he was telling the truth, like these bells that they found at the bottom of the ocean, which could correlate to the gold island that he found. This episode was absolutely insane. It had literally everything. It had a really awesome fight to start with, and then it had a bunch of really cool and exciting information that we're going to get to see pay off, I imagine, eventually in the future. We got a bunch of new character reveals and plot points, and a bunch of really interesting things happened, and then Luffy, with one punch, just decks him, and he absolutely destroys him, caves his face in, essentially. He's got blood all on his fist, and Bellamy pirates are just looking at him like, what the fuck have we done here? We got to see the world government, I believe for the first time, all having a meeting talking about Crocodile's defeat and the fact that the balance of the three powers is now being disturbed. Blackbeard and his crew seemed really scary. What Blackbeard did to the member of the Bellamy pirates was actually disgusting, like actual disrespect. And wow. It's finally time to see if the legend is true. It's finally time to see if the Sky Island actually exists. And by the way, I love the way that this episode was sort of framed and played out. The Straw Hats heading towards the sky via the upstream while We Are is playing gave me goosebumps. I thought that was so good. I've seen some people say that this is actually their favourite part of Skypiea, the beginning, you know, Jaya, the setup towards them. Before they even get to the sky, people love this part of it. You know, Bellamy is a fantastic villain, and his fight with Luffy one-shotting him was so fantastic. The introduction to Blackbeard when he first met Luffy, I thought was really good as well. It's the first time we saw Whitebeard, the world government. There's lots of really interesting stuff, and the pacing, like I said, in this arc is really well done. It doesn't waste time with anything, and the mystery that grows towards Sky Island, does it exist, does it not, I think was really well done. And also you have Cricket and the Masira pirates. I love their whole dynamic and the mystery of Noland. Is he telling the truth? Is he not? Like I said, this was a perfect setup towards Skypiea, and I think it did a great job in building up excitement for that. But I thought the Jaya arc was fantastic. I really did enjoy it. I could see why people think it's the best part of Skypiea, because it's just constantly doing things and it's constantly interesting, while Skypiea has some maybe slower moments, I guess you could say, but it's a lot grander in scale. But regardless, the Jaya arc I think is really good. So without further ado, on to Skypiea.
The world of One Piece just got even more exciting and expansive now that the Straw Hats have arrived above the clouds. There's a whole new world now to explore, and of course the concept of Sky Islands and a land above the clouds isn't anything new, really, but in a world as expansive and as, like, well written as One Piece, having this whole new realm, essentially, for the Straw Hats to, you know, find new islands, new characters, and all that sort of stuff is a really exciting concept to me. And we learned a little bit more about the civilization that lives above the clouds. It's a lot more welcoming than I expected. I expected them to immediately come with some sort of confrontation, and I suppose they did in the middle layer, but when they got to this top layer, they were actually greeted by some really nice people. So the peace didn't last very long in Skypiea. I didn't think it would somehow, but the Straw Hats are being targeted by not just the government, but God itself. Straw Hat pirates have been in Skypiea for less than an hour, and they've already received the death penalty. I mean, wow, they've been there for, like I said, like not even half an hour probably, and they've incurred God's wrath. They've broken about 10 different laws. They're now being targeted by a bunch of defenders of the country of Skypiea. I mean, what else can you say? No matter where the Straw Hats go, they always end up being notorious. Nami, Chopper, Zoro, and Robin have all been essentially kidnapped by God's minions, God's soldiers, I guess you could say, and they are being brought directly to him, or at least his land. They're getting brought to the upper yard. One of my favourite episodes in Skypiea so far. The tension throughout this episode was, like, really, really something. Like, the whole time, I just felt like something was up, something was wrong. And you could tell from the beginning with Connis that she didn't want to do what she was doing. It seems like all the citizens are under this threat that if they do not enact this this divine punishment or lead the people that need it to God himself or the upper yard, they'll be punished and they will be killed. Is it just me, or is this like the most powerful person Luffy's ever fought so far? Like, just straight out the gate, this Satori character seems like unbeatable. We learned a little bit more about the former god known as Ganful, and I was sort of right in my prediction in the fact that Aneru usurped him, took him away from his throne, kicked him out from being a god, essentially, and now Ganful is trying to fight back against Aneru. Second priest from Upper Yard has attacked one of the Straw Hats, and it is Chopper. Poor guy is getting absolutely rinsed at the moment, but he's doing an amazing job trying to protect the Going Merry, although part of it has broken down and he's had to throw part of it in the lake. It's really sad to see at the moment. Chopper is currently not even really defending himself versus Shura. Well, this episode went in a completely different direction than I was expecting. Ganful actually lost to Shura. Now, I thought Ganful, being a former god, one of the former gods of Skypiea, or the former god of Skypiea, I guess you could say, would come in and start taking out the priests, you know, Shura, Satori, but it turns out Shura actually took out Ganful. This was one of my, if not my absolute favourite discoveries of One Piece so far, and that is the mystery of what Upper Yard actually is. And in this episode, we got a massive revelation about it, the slow reveal to what Upper Yard actually is, and how it got to the place that it is right now and why it is how it is, I thought was absolutely masterfully told. It didn't rush to telling us exactly what Upper Yard was. It let it slowly burn. It let the mystery slowly start creeping up. And this discovery was incredible. I love the way that this was done. We finally got to meet the god known as Enel, and he is completely different than what I was expecting. I was assuming he was somebody that looked a little bit more like Ganful, maybe like an old man with a long white beard, you know, like god-like figure, do you know what I mean? But he looks more like Sanji with bongos on his back. The way he talks and just the way he sort of, his demeanor and everything like that, he's not exactly scary. He's not like godly or anything like that. But I suppose that's sort of the point of this, is like, he's not necessarily actually God, you know, he's not supposed to be. He's just this guy that's taken the figure of God, has taken the role of a god. So it gave me a completely different perspective on the story and the arc as a whole of Skypiea, and who the victims are, who the heroes and villains are. It just completely changed everything for me. This is their homeland. Upper Yard is their homeland, and it's been taken over by the Sky People because of this Viarth stuff, you know, the soil, the dirt, that the Sky People basically revere and care so much about, and they can't live without it at this point. It's become an integral part of the Skypian culture, of the Sky People, and they essentially stole the homeland of this indigenous tribe that lived in Upper Yard. Upper Yard is now in all-out war. The Shandians are fighting to get their homeland back, while Enel and the Divine Soldiers and the priests are fighting to keep their territory. Wiper actually managed to destroy Shura, and it was pretty brutal, actually. He's willing to risk his own life in order to get his homeland back. It was very, very badass the way he took out Shura, I can't lie. Like, that made me, like, such a bigger fan of Wiper. Seeing Enel just appear out of nowhere is terrifying. So I don't know where it's going to go from here, but I'm excited to find out, but the dude he is quite scary, actually. Well, it's official. Enel is an absolute demon. He just showed up out of nowhere, cooked Sanji and Usopp, just completely fried him, knocked him unconscious, basically killed him in front of Nami and Ganful, told Ganful and Nami about his true motive about the Island of Gold, which does exist, by the way. It's basically just been confirmed that, you know, Noland the liar wasn't not lying. This episode was a reminder of why I love Chopper and why he is one of my favourite characters in One Piece, because he might not be the strongest, he might not be the fastest or the smartest or anything like that, but he fucking tries, you know what I mean? He tries his absolute best to do his best for people he cares about, to protect himself and others. He managed to actually defeat Gidatsu in a situation where he probably should have fumbled, but he didn't, because, you know, Chopper never gives up. Mate, this dude Enel is completely cracked, man. Like, the disrespect Enel had in this episode is insane. He was fighting Kamakari, one of the Shandorians, and Kamakari is fighting his best. He's trying to win back his homeland for his people, and Enel says, I'm just going to sit here for 5 minutes, and you can attack me all you want. I ain't gonna do shit. This guy Enel, he's actually like a god at this point. Like, his power is so ridiculous, and we just saw a small display of it. I feel like in this episode, the dude is a completely different level. Nico Robin is absolutely badass, bro. I must have forgot that she was really like that. She has now discovered the ruins of Shandora, the city of gold. Basically, there's a lot of history to be discovered here, and the fact that Nico Robin is here to discover it all makes me super excited. Chopper got absolutely rinsed in this episode, bro. I'm gutted. How could you just take out Chopper like that, dude? Like, goddamn. When Zoro discovered Chopper in this episode, it was actually quite heartbreaking. I mean, it's rare you get to see Zoro display that sort of emotion. Obviously, he cares a lot about his friends, about his crewmates, and he's not like an emotionless guy. He's very cool most of the time, you know what I mean? He's very calm and collected. Well, I wouldn't say calm. Zoro does scream a lot, especially when he's fighting. But seeing him display that sort of like genuine worry and concern over his friend, and seeing Chopper like that is heartbreaking, bro. I love Chopper. I'm a Chopper fan. I'm a Chopper fanboy. You know what I mean? One of the saddest moments and the biggest tragedies in Skypiea happened in this episode, and it's a character that I haven't really discussed too much before, but she's called Lackey. She tries to fight. She tries to shoot him. She tries to defend herself, but she ultimately ends up getting struck down by Enel right in front of Wiper, and you can tell Wiper feels an immense amount of guilt and worry for her. And now, he even said it himself, it doesn't matter who it is, what they are, if they challenge him in any sort of way, he treats everybody equally, and he did, and he struck her down, and it was very sad. He plans to drop Skypiea down to the Blue Sea, killing everybody on it, including the Shandians, the Sky People, everybody in between. It's obvious Eneru does not have any sort of sympathy or care towards Skypiea or its people, and whatever his grand plan is, it's terrifying, and it involves a massacre of everybody. Enel's terrifying prophecy about there being 5 survivors is coming to a head. However, there is 6 remaining, and that is Nami, Ganful, Wiper, Zoro, and Robin, and Enel, of course, so that's 6. And he says there's 3 minutes left, so somebody has to die, which, I mean, it's just a scary fucking thing to say. He plans to go to a place called Endless Verth, which is essentially this dreamland, but he's intending to bring everybody that survived this survival challenge with him. Nell is clearly obsessed with the idea of being God, not just having the title, but being this God that's feared and respected and revered by everybody. Nell is an absolute demon, man. His self-resurrection at the beginning of this episode was genuinely one of the most haunting things I think I've seen in One Piece so far. While he might not actually be God, he definitely feels like one right now. But Nell may be in trouble now because Luffy had finally escaped the giant snake and discovered the burnt bodies of Zoro and Robin and everybody else, and he's pissed, and when Luffy's pissed at someone, they're getting punched straight in the fucking mouth. So I can't wait to see this inevitable confrontation between Luffy and Enel. The moment I've been waiting for absolutely ages in Skypiea is here. Enel versus Luffy, and it's gone completely differently than I expected. Enel's godly persona is finally crumbling. Something that I didn't even consider going into this fight is the fact that Luffy, of course, is a rubber person, and rubber is not affected by electricity, so he is literally immune to Enel, which is such a crazy twist that I think is so obvious, but I didn't even think of it, bro. I can't believe Luffy had Ultra Instinct 20 years before Goku did. Like, this has blown my mind, bro. I love the way that this fight is going. Enel is still a massive threat. He still has Mantra. He can still predict Luffy's moves. So Luffy is actually a bit of a genius, ironically, by not thinking. By dumping out all the thoughts in his head and letting his body move on its own, he's managed to counter Enel's attacks. I can't believe this, man. I thought Enel was done for sure. The punch that Luffy landed on him, Jesus Christ, that would have have broken about every single bone in most people's bodies. But I was so wrong. Enel didn't only survive, he managed to turn the tables back on Luffy. I'm actually stunned that Nami and Usopp managed to avoid Enel's attacks for as long as they did. Like, they were dodging it in the silliest ways I think I've ever seen in my life. And when Usopp avoided that attack and then smacked his head against the side of the ship, genuinely one of the funniest things I've ever seen. I was fucking belly laughing at him, man. This is what everything's been leading towards, Enel's destruction of Skypiea and the people inside it, and it's absolute carnage right now. I don't know who's supposed to stop it, except maybe Luffy, who is now resurrected, who's resurfaced from the floor in which he came, and now he's charging after Enel's head, and he is the only person that can stop Enel. The fairy tales and stories told about this man for generations painted him as a coward and a liar, and we see from this episode that he is far from both of those things. He was a captain, adventurer, explorer, a botanist, somebody that genuinely cared about people and helping them. Him and Kalgara became really good friends. They were laughing and joking together. Kalgara even showed Noland and his crew the City of Gold, Shandora, their pride and joy, including the giant bell that had the poneglyph that Robin's still trying to find. The entire village wants Noland to leave, and we don't really know why. What the hell has he actually done? But given the fact that this is One Piece, I have a feeling this is going to end in absolute heartbreak and me in tears. God, this story was absolutely devastating. This was the conclusion to the story between Noland and Kalgara, and it was even more tragic than I anticipated, even though I essentially knew how it was going to end from the beginning. Seeing it play out the way it did was really heartbreaking. Noland might be one of the most tragic and misunderstood characters in general in the world of One Piece. The Kalgara never getting the chance to meet Noland again after waiting for him for so long, after ringing that bell every day since he departed, and never getting the chance, having to die on the battlefield without ever seeing him again is another tragic piece to this story. Learning the history of Shandora and Kalgara and Noland has added so much depth to this story, and Eiichiro Oda is a genius. I've never seen a character stand on conviction like Luffy does. If he says he's going to do something, he fucking does it. And Nell keeps knocking Luffy down over and over again, but Luffy keeps getting up and keeps charging him until he eventually gets up there, and he will not stop until he gets to ring that bell. This is the most pivotal moment in the Skypiea arc. It's also one of my favourite build-ups to a finale ever. Absolutely everything in this story has been leading up to this point. Skypiea itself hangs in the balance. The history of Noland, Kalgara, Shandia, the giant bell being rung, it all comes down to this. Knowing this is Luffy's absolute last chance to defeat Enel and save all of Skypiea and protect the history of the Shandians. God, this arc is fucking amazing. Just seen the ending to the fight between Luffy and Enel, and it was absolutely incredible. Literally, I'm speechless, man. What all of this represents is so much bigger than just the fight itself. Luffy ringing that bell and all of the Shandorians hearing it, and hopefully Cricket hearing it as well, so he knows about the existence of Shandora and what it means to the people of Shandia, the Sky People, the Shandorians, everybody like that. This is amazing. This is everything in this arc. Not to mention how hype it was to see Luffy finally smash Enel to fucking bits after everything that they've been through and everything Enel's done to these people. This has to be one of the most underappreciated arcs in all of anime. That bell ringing means everything, and the way that it's been written and everything sort of came to that point where when that bell was rung, it meant so much to everybody involved in this entire arc. I thought was so amazingly written. It gave me goosebumps, man. Goldie Roger might be involved in some way, shape or form. In fact, we know he's involved because when Robin finally got to read the poneglyph under the golden bell, he signed it himself and he said he's going to follow this text to the end of the world. And I mean, that just adds a whole new layer of intrigue to this whole mystery. And this episode put a bow around one of the most underrated arcs in my opinion, the Skypiea arc. I adored it. I love the way that they've left the island the way it is, and now they're returning to the Blue Sea, and I'm really excited about that too.
So my opinions on Skypiea, I thought it was really good. I did enjoy it a lot. It's not my favourite arc ever, and I can see why people don't like it. It doesn't have a massive effect on the entirety of One Piece. You know, some people say it's irrelevant. It's essentially like a giant filler arc. I don't personally see it like that because I still think there's a good amount of character development in a lot of the Straw Hats. I think Enel is a fantastic villain. A lot of people, even people that don't like Skypiea, seem to like Enel, and I can see why. He's great. His whole god complex is really interesting. The fact that Luffy is the antithesis of him, I thought was a great twist. Luffy was essentially the only one that could beat him. Him being this early on in the series and no one being this powerful, I think was quite cool looking back at it because, yeah, he almost didn't fit in this era because he was so strong and Luffy just happened to be made of rubber so he could counter him. The story between Noland and Kalgara was one of my favourite aspects of this whole arc as well. I thought their story was absolutely beautiful. The mystery throughout all of it, like what is Upper Yard and where did it come from, was really intriguing. I love that whole thing. The reveal of that was fantastic. The Shandians, the Sky People, I love the side characters, I guess, of this, or the citizens. I thought Pagia and Konis was great, as well as Kalgara. Just loads of really good characters. Wiper, sorry, not Kalgara. Kalgara was great, but Wiper is awesome. There's just a lot of stuff I loved in Skypiea, but like I said, there was some slower moments. Sometimes it took a little while to get where we wanted to go. Upper Yard, there was a lot of like sort of fights that they did need to happen, but maybe dragged a little bit. But overall, I think Skypiea is good, man. It's not my favorite arc. I wouldn't even say it's my top 5 in One Piece probably, but I don't have a massive problem with it at all. I did enjoy it a lot, especially when I first watched it. Looking back, it's not the peak of One Piece, but I still think even not the peak of One Piece is better than a lot of other shows, and it's still really well written and I still enjoy it. So yeah, that's my opinion on Skypiea. So before we wrap this video up, I want to talk about the G8 arc, so let's do it.
People say this is the best filler arc in One Piece, also known as the G8 arc, and I'm starting it today, and I already really like the premise of it all. Really enjoy investigatory stories where there's a mystery to be solved and there's a small team of people trying to solve it. As Sanji cooks his food, he uses all the leftovers that the chefs didn't use, and we know Sanji so well at this point. We know he won't ever let food go to waste, he won't let anybody starve, we know where he comes from, and I think that's what's so great about this, is the fact that he never compromises on his principles, and he's so consistent in that. The thing that makes Chopper so great is his genuine kindness in any situation, and his want to pass on Dr. Hiriluk's dream to the rest of the world, this person that he looked up to and he loves more than anybody. There's a doctor in this episode who's a pediatrician who's scared of blood and surgery, and Chopper teaches her the idea that everybody needs to be saved and you need to be the cherry blossom in this situation. You need to be the one that heals these people and give them hope, and I think that's so beautiful. The G8 filler arc is surprisingly amazing so far. One of my favourite parts about it is seeing how each Straw Hat reacts to this situation completely differently. I think the commander Jonathan is a really good foil for the Straw Hats as well. I love how he's playing sort of like a chess game with the Straw Hats at the moment and trying to figure out their individual moves and what exactly they're doing. I think it's a really interesting plot point. The thing that's been lurking in the background that I think is making this arc so enjoyable for me to watch is the character known as Jonathan, Captain Jonathan I should say, because he is literally like nobody else in this arc. Because while most of the Navy are scrambling around trying to figure out what to do with the Straw Hats, Jonathan is calm, cool, collected. He's playing basically a mental chess game with the Straw Hats, and he gets them better than anybody else. This episode got me quite emotional, man. Really got me reminiscing about the journey of One Piece and the Straw Hats so far, and that includes the Going Merry, who has been there the entire time, and all of the damage that is taken is basically like battle scars for the ship itself. And interestingly enough, the main takeaway for this episode from me is that the Going Merry is just as much a part of the Straw Hat crew as anybody else is. It's incredible to me that even the filler in One Piece is fucking fantastic. I've really enjoyed the whole mental chess game aspect of this arc, specifically Jonathan trying to figure out exactly what the Straw Hats are doing next and their next move and capture them. Even though he's a very nice guy just doing his job, it's been fun watching him try to foil the Straw Hats and capture them and lay all these sort of traps out for him. It's been a nice change of pace having Jonathan as the villain of this arc, because up to this point every single villain of every arc has been so fucking hateable, but Jonathan is the complete opposite. I actually love the dude. I usually skip filler, but this really surprised me with how much I actually enjoyed it. The pacing was incredible. I wasn't bored for 1 second. The length of this arc was perfect for the story it was trying to tell. I almost wish it was a bit longer though, because I really like the characters introduced in this arc, and that ending with the Straw Hats escaping I thought was very cleverly written as well. I really enjoyed it.
That was the G8 arc. 99% of the time I skipped filler, but so many people told me to watch this, and I can see why people like it. I think it was really great. It was such a great change of pace, especially after something as grand as Skypiea. This was a little bit smaller scale, a little bit more compact. We got to spend a little bit more time individually with the Straw Hats, and they got to show why they're great. You know, each character sort of had their own moments in this arc, and Jonathan, as I said multiple times throughout my reviews, was a fantastic foil for the Straw Hats, and he was so different than every other villain we've seen before. Up to this point, all the villains were so hateable, you know, Nell, Crocodile, Arlong, and Jonathan was a really likable guy. He just happened to have to do his job. He had to try and get rid of the Straw Hats or capture them or whatever he was doing. So and the whole chess game aspect of it, where he was trying to foil them and they were trying to escape, and it was like this big game to him, I thought was great as well. But the G8 arc I think was fantastic, and if you're gonna do filler, this is the way to do it. So if you haven't seen it, I definitely recommend that arc. But yeah, those were all my opinions on the Skypiea Saga. Let me know what you think about Skypiea in the comment section below. I want to know, do you love it? Do you hate it? Are you somewhere in the middle? What do you think about Jaya, Skypiea, G8? I want to hear all your opinions, because I always love discussing this show. It is my favorite anime, so anytime I get to talk to anybody about it is a great time for me. But yeah, my final thoughts, Skypiea Saga, it's great. It's not the best. I do think it's underrated. I think it's overhated maybe, but you know, everyone's entitled to their opinion, and this is just mine. So yeah, thank you guys very much for watching. Hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you next time for Water 7 and Ennie's Lobby. I can't wait. Let's do it.